Welcome to our Stone Soup Group Lunch and Learn. This is a quarterly event that the Stone Soup Group DDRC team coordinates, and it's being delivered by Zoom today. And my name is Roberta Hovermail, and I am a developmental disabilities resource connection navigator at Stone Soup Group, and I serve the Matsu Valley. And this presentation is being recorded today and will be available to access at our Stone Soup Group website and in our training and events recording archives. So please check out the other recordings available, so they may be a really great, valuable resource to you as well. And so it is my privilege today to introduce our presenter, Angelina Salvato, and she is a lifelong Alaskan, and she has been in law enforcement for over 20 years. If you don't already know Angie, I need to share a little bit about her. She has actually started out as a mental health probation officer when she was 22 years old in Anchorage. She attended the first CIT, or Crisis Intervention Team school in Alaska in 2002. In 2007, she moved over to the Anchorage Police Department, and she is currently a senior patrol officer assigned to backgrounds and recruiting. And Angie has always been an advocate for people with unique needs, as she grew up with her Uncle Dan, who experienced Down syndrome, and also her daughter Gianna, who experiences Down syndrome. Angie completed her master's degree in early childhood special education in 2013, and she served a 2-year term on the Governor's Council for Disabilities and Special Education. She is the president of the board for Focus, and Angie and her daughter Gianna have attended many key campaigns together in Juneau, where they advocated for important legislative priorities for the disability community. Angie also was selected as one of 100 U.S. police officers to carry the law enforcement torch around the UAE, or United Arab Emirates, running for 17 days, supporting Special Olympics in the Middle East in 2019. And she also is the communications officer for the police union, and she is a chairperson for their nonprofit arm, which is Anchorage Cops for Community, which fosters and inspires community well-being through collaboration between the community and law enforcement. And it's a wonderful program. And Angie is also pursuing her PhD in clinical psychology. So, and also another really cool fact is that Angie was a contestant, maybe you'll recognize her, from the National Geographic reality show Race to the Center of the Earth. And it was an adventure race for $1 million, where Angie and her team of other police officers raced through Russia and Hawaii. And you could watch all 7 wonderful episodes on the Disney Plus channel to see who won. And I want to thank Angie for being here today. She has a vast background, as I just related, in the field. And
wow, she's incredible.
Yes, she is. And she is going to be presenting today for our Lunch and Learn about the Crisis Intervention Team. And
Ooh,
Angie,
I'm excited.
We all are. So thank you. And so Angie, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Roberta, for that wonderful introduction. But basically today, I just want to talk about the Anchorage Police Department in general, but also our CIT team. In 2002, like Roberta said, when I went through the first CIT training, it was just this small group of people, but our response to folks who have special needs in the community, who experience disabilities, mental health, substance abuse, has just expanded over the past 20 years. So this is just a short little snippet of what we can offer to kind of get people routed to the right resources. So I just appreciate you all having me. So you guys already heard enough about me. I will say, though, that I do work in backgrounds and recruiting. So if you know someone who wants to apply to be a police officer, please share my information with them, because that's actually what I do for a living here at APD. So that's me. So a little bit about CIT. hopefully some of you have heard a little bit about it, but basically it is the Crisis Intervention Team. Stands for CIT. You might see some patches around town. Our shoulder patches actually will say CIT. Unfortunately, if you have a whole bunch of other things that you do, not all of our CIT officers will have that patch because it might have a SWAT patch or another job that they do, but you might see that around town. CIT started in Memphis, Tennessee in 1988 after a police officer involved shooting with a man who was mentally ill, who was cutting himself and then kind of charged at the officers with a knife. And so out of that, there was a partnership with NAMI that was created. And this CIT program was really created to help officers kind of understand mental illness, to have some experience with people who experience mental illness, and it has just expanded from there. As you can see, it's been adopted in more than 2,700 different communities in the United States. Right now, we offer about half of the training to all of our recruits. So every single recruit that comes through the academy gets 20 hours of CIT, and then they will come back for the entire 40 hours. So most of our CIT officers have about 60 hours of training in CIT. And it's not just officers, it's call takers, dispatchers, and a lot of our staff who interact with the public who have been through CIT training. So right now, and this is the patch I was talking about, you'll see kind of that shoulder patch on some of our officers' uniforms that says CIT. So right now we have, just at the Anchorage Police Department, we have over 150 trained CIT employees. This says officers, but really that includes our call takers and dispatchers as well. Like I said, they go to that 40-hour course. And the reason why we've gone back and forth over the years. I used to be an instructor at the academy, and I really pushed at one point to put the 40-hour training in the academy, because the academy is 24 weeks, that's 6 months. But we found that we're actually getting more bang for our buck to have that initial CIT training, that sort of 20-hour, 2 days in the academy. And then once the officers go out and learn how to be police officers, we have them come back for that 40-hour training, and it means so much more to them. They kind of understand already how to be a police officer. They've experienced a bit of the folks that need our services out there, and then they come back, and it just means a lot more to them when they come back for the full CIT course. So in that CIT course, it's kind of fun. If you ever get a chance to come, the folks that run the course often welcome parents, advocates, self-advocates, people in the field, and they come in, and you're welcome to come in for the whole 40-hour training or just parts of it. But we do scenarios. We put the recruits through scenarios where they actually have to role play in different situations. Maybe if someone is threatening self-harm, or maybe if someone is experiences autism and is nonverbal, how to kind of work through the needs in that area on that call. The biggest thing about we're training these officers in CIT not only is to have empathy with people who kind of experience things differently maybe than they do, but that there's no rush on these calls. There's no rush to go to the next call. If you are on a call that needs a CIT officer, there's no rush. You're there to figure out what's best for everyone involved. And so we really focus on that through the 40-hour training. We have self-advocates come and present to the officers. It's very, very meaningful and moving for our officers to experience listening to what it's like to have to deal with the police. Maybe if you experience a mental illness, you have some substance abuse stuff going on, and now you're faced with these two police officers, that have guns and badges. And so to sort of hear it from that side is really, really important for our officers. The ARC now comes and presents on DD issues. We have all kinds of mental health professionals come and present during this 40-hour training. And then they get to go out in the field and actually go to these different resource centers so that they can firsthand know what the resources look like, what they're like, so that when they're talking to folks on a call, it's less intimidating. Maybe someone's never experienced going to Providence psychiatric emergency room, and these officers have now experienced it kind of from the inside out, and they're able to make it a little bit less scary for those folks. And so field trips, everybody likes a field trip, right? So that's what the 40-hour training looks like for our CIT officers. I'm going to kind of back up a little bit because people often have questions about like just who are our police officers? What are they like? How do they become police officers? So I just want to sort of take you through what it's like for a typical person who applies to be a police officer. They might see a banner on a bus that APD is hiring, which we're always hiring. So spread the word, we're always hiring. They then fill out an application. We get that application from City Hall, and we get on the phone with them right away. And we start this kind of 6-month recruiting, backgrounds, and hiring process. It's a very intense process. They start with a written test, a physical test. They do a background interview, which is basically we sit them down in a chair and say, you were born here, and now what is every single thing that happened to you since you became an adult and your whole life. Then we have them do written psychological, in-person psychological, and finally the entire background process ends in a polygraph. So they sit down for a polygraph to make sure that they have been honest with us throughout the entire process. The Anchorage Police Department definitely prides ourselves in integrity and trust of the community. So we can't have officers that have lied to us at any point in the process. So then they get a final job offer to start the academy, and they start the academy right here at Jewel Lake and Diamond. Our academy is not a live-in academy like the troopers have. It's a 410s. So they come to us 4 days a week. They have 3 days off. And our academy is not a boot camp style academy. It's very much an educational, high level. We very much respect each one of our recruits as adults and what they can bring to us as well as what we can give to them. So 24 weeks in the academy. That includes all kinds of classes. Every day is a different class for 930 hours of the academy. They get all kinds of verbal de-escalation, firearms, defensive tactics, cultural awareness. They get that CIT block, and they are absorbing everything through a fire hose. It is a very overwhelming 6 months, but the last week kind of culminates in what we call officer survival. When we go out and we take over a hotel somewhere, we go to Chillicoot Charlie's and we put them through all kinds of scenarios. Everything they've learned in 6 months, now they're on their own. Can they kind of cut it? Can they stay alive? And can they solve each problem as it comes to them? And so then they get to graduate. Like you can see in this photo here, our recruits graduate and get sworn in as police officers. But that's not it. That only means that they can ride in a police car in the FTO process. So then FTO lasts about 4 months. They ride with a senior officer who's been trained as a field training officer. They get critiqued all day, every day, from how they speak to people, how they hold themselves, whether they can figure out what to do on each call. It is a very stressful first year of employment with us. And then they can graduate, if they graduate, field training. And the best day of a police officer's job is probably the day they get to drive by themselves in a police car. And they can make a U-turn if they need to. They can get lost and nobody's yelling at them. And I always tell people, just wait, just get through. Don't quit until you spend 1 day in a police car by yourself, because it is really the best job on earth that we can go and talk to every type of person, learn from our community, and really serve the community in that meaningful way. So that's kind of what it looks like. They're still on probation. They're still a probationary employee for about 18 months. So even if they kind of mess up or if they struggle, even after FTO, they can still be kind of let go for any kind of performance related issue. So we're very much on top of these new officers to really continue our culture here of professional policing, how we treat the community, how we treat each other, and that Alaska really expects from us, and Anchorage expects that high level of service. So I always say it took me 5 years to really know what the heck I was doing. It's a really intense job. People expect the world from you, and you have to know everything, pretty much. If nobody knows what to do, they always just call the police. So we've got to figure something out. So let's see. Then, we, as these officers get out in the community, we continue with in-service training. So this is an example of in-service training I just threw on here because we partnered with the Center for Human Development and created this video. And so I'll give you a little break from me talking, and it's an 8-minute video, so it's kind of long, but it is an example of how we've partnered in the community. Now, don't give it a whole lot of critique because these are not professional actors. We worked with like I said, the Center for Human Development, and a couple of our officers that you'll see in this video actually have children who experience autism. So they volunteered to be not only the narrator, but the actor, some of the actors in the video. And this just, we did this, and we showed it to every one of our police officers as how they could, if they encountered like a person who maybe had autism and was nonverbal, how might they solve a problem outside of the kind of traditional methods of a police officer that you may have seen on TV. So I'll start this here, and I'll turn off my mic. Let's see if this will work.
Most of us experience the frustration of not being able to communicate with another person. For many people who experience disabilities, communication challenges are a part of daily life. Imagine being unable to relay basic wants and needs to another person because of the inability to speak. Well, what if you were fluent in another language or device, such as American Sign Language or use of a speech-generating device, but for some reason couldn't use it? What if you couldn't understand the words and actions of others during a crisis? In this training, you'll learn strategies to effectively communicate with people who experience disabilities like autism spectrum disorder, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury. These strategies are based on best practices identified from studies of law enforcement training needs. You'll learn communication strategies to improve safety and to increase the potential for more efficient calls and conflict resolution. When officers interact with a person, it's important to consider that there might be a mismatch between the person's physical appearance and his or her ability to communicate. An adult may have cognitive skills that are closer to a child's. Other people may have typical cognitive skills, but emotionally or socially function at a much younger age that makes it hard for them to communicate or participate in the community. We all use multiple ways of communication to best get our messages across in a variety of situations. We use speech, body language and gestures, writing, texting, and more. While the majority of people use speech, some people who experience disabilities rely on other forms of communication, like writing, pointing to picture symbols, using sign language, or using a computerized device that can generate speech.
My name is Logan. Great. How old are you? I'm 9 years old.
When having a communication challenge in a crisis situation, officers may consider looking for clues that the person uses another way to communicate, like the presence of picture symbols, communication boards, or an iPad or other device in the room. There are several evidence-based strategies that officers may use to improve communication in many kinds of situations. These strategies are: use a slow rate of speech, break directions into steps, provide wait time for response, and use concrete and direct language. In this scene, an officer is responding to a domestic violence call. Neighbors have called and reported hearing a loud disturbance from inside a house, and then a man and a woman continued fighting in the front yard. Some neighbors reported seeing him holding the woman to the ground and pointing a knife at her. One of the neighbors thought the man left in a truck. While other officers are interviewing the woman who appears to be the victim, the police are knocking on neighbors' doors. At first, the officer is talking as he would in a typical interaction, which isn't working very well with this person with a disability.
Hi, did you call us? What's going on? See what happened out here on the lawn? Can you hear me? Is there anybody else in here with you, or is it just you? Sir, what's your name?
Tom,
Okay, Tom, great. So what happened out here on the lawn? Did you see him fighting? So which way did the guy go? What did he look like? Okay, it sounds like you've got some good information, Tom, that can be helpful to us. So I really need to know what you saw, because it sounds like the guy kind of split. He maybe just took off. So why don't you just take a shot at it and tell me what happened?
okay.
Did you see what happened? Okay, I'm sorry, Tom. My name's Sergeant Rock. I'm with the Anchorage Police Department. Would it be okay if I came inside and we talked about what happened, what you saw?
The officer realized that his usual approach wasn't working, and he changed tactics. In the next scene, he will use some specific strategies to improve communication and get the information he needs.
So, Tom, how long have you lived here?
1 year.
Well, you have a really nice place. So what did you see right before we got here?
They were yelling. He was yelling at her. He held her to the ground. I think he had a knife. She was scared. Is she okay?
She's gonna be okay. She was scared though. So what did you see happen after he held her to the ground?
I heard sirens. Then you came.
Okay. Could you see what he was wearing?
Jeans, black t-shirt, and gray tennis shoes. He ran into the house across the street when the sirens were being loud.
Can you get that information out, please? Can you describe the house for me, Tom?
Let's see what he did. Using the slow rate of speech helps people with disabilities process information. Stress and environmental input, like noise and flashing lights, may make it harder for the person to understand you. Slowing your speaking rate allows time to process. Breaking directions into sequential steps helps with comprehension and gives the officers an opportunity to make sure the person has understood each step. Too many directions at one time can cause a person to be confused or panic. Pausing and waiting after giving a direction or asking a question may help get a verbal or behavioral response. You may need to wait up to 10 seconds or more, depending on the person. Using concrete and literal language helps people relate directly to what they can see, hear, or process with their senses. It clearly states what you want and doesn't require interpretation. Avoid using sarcasm or expressions like "take a seat" or "keep your eye out." In the scene, the officer initially said, "give it a shot," and "the guy split," which was confusing to the witness. By using these strategies, the officer was able to get the critical information he needed from the witness. These resources may be of help to you in your work with people who experience disabilities. The Aging and Disability Resource Center, 211, and Assistive Technology of Alaska, or ATLA.
The other thing that people don't often realize is APD is a customer service agency. We have customers. Every single one of you are a taxpayer, and so you are our customers. We will not ever ignore a call. So if you call 911, we will have an officer. If you call 311, we will have an officer respond if it meets, the criteria. We do have some call takers, if it's a situation where someone in records needs to take the report or something, that does happen. But if someone says that an officer is in route or is coming, they will show up. If it is emergency response, you should always ask for a CIT officer. Once you ask for a CIT officer, that there will be one assigned. Now, if it's an emergency, the closest officer will be assigned, but still a CIT officer will be assigned and they will come to the call. So never be afraid, first of all, to call the police, and then don't be afraid to ask for a CIT officer. And if you don't feel like you're getting the service that you need, or you're unhappy with the response, never worry about asking for a supervisor, because that is certainly also something that people do all the time. So how do you call the police in Anchorage? There's several ways to stay in contact with us. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. But if you need to call us, 911 is for emergencies and 311 is for non-emergencies if you're in the Anchorage area. So that's an easy way to reach out to us. Let's talk a little bit about non-emergencies. So I'm just moving my screen here. The non-emergency line, 311, you will probably have to stay on hold a little bit to wait for a dispatcher. If you haven't visited dispatch before, which, by the way, you can do a ride-along, sit-along, as they call it in dispatch. You can go to dispatch and actually experience a sit-along with them. It's a dark room where there's a big, huge board up on the wall that tells the call takers and dispatchers how many calls are in queue and the time that they've been waiting. So it's pretty stressful, but they are trying to get to those 911 calls as a priority, and 311 calls will wait until those 911 calls are not coming in. So you may have to wait a few minutes, but it's not like in other big cities. They will get to you, so stay on the line. If it's a non-emergency, and I'll give a couple examples of what I mean by that in a minute, but you can ask for a CIT officer, and one will be assigned to your call. What's new in Anchorage is you can also ask for the mobile crisis team. And the mobile crisis team is run out of AFD right now, the fire department. And you can ask for the mobile crisis team in a couple different ways. You can ask for them to respond, and our dispatch at the call center for 311 will transfer that call over to the mobile crisis team dispatcher. And they will talk to you about whatever's going on. And they may send the mobile crisis team, and I'll talk about what the mobile crisis team is in a minute. They're the ones who come out. They're not police officers. They are trained in behavioral health crisis, and they will be sent to your location for that non-emergency. There are some times that maybe that let's say you have a child, a small child who has autism, who typically maybe will start banging their head on something, and that the child is not trying to hurt anyone or not necessarily trying to hurt themselves, but that's just part of the experience that they have. You may end up calling the mobile crisis team. If you tell a dispatcher that someone is hurting themselves or is being violent, that no longer is a non-emergency call. They will take that very, very seriously, and that will turn into emergency type call. So if you know that you can handle that and it's your child, you are the expert on your child, you may just want to ask for the mobile crisis team to respond, to give you a call. And so that those clinicians will call you and kind of assess on their own what's going on with you, rather than leaving that in a dispatcher's hands that might not have the higher level of experience with those symptoms and those behaviors. So you can ask for the mobile crisis team to come out, but you can also just say, can you have one of the clinicians call me? And they can call you and kind of assess from there where to go. Another option for a non-emergency, if it's a mental health crisis, that's not an emergency, you may also get our MIT program, and I'll get to the details on that, but that they might assign you our #1 CIT officer, Ruth Adolph, and she partners with a social worker here at APD, and they may be assigned to your situation. Maybe you're calling for your brother who has a chronic mental health condition and you want him to be checked on, and we've had a lot of calls about him, and they have this special ability to stay not connected to the 911 call stack, and they just do their own thing. So they can maybe come out and make a plan with your brother to check in with them every couple weeks. The other thing that MIT does is they may follow up on a call for service that a CIT officer was requested. And they may follow up with folks for that. So that's 311. Again, kind of the things that 311, I put this picture up here because this was a lost pony that our police officers found. So this would be something like a non-emergency, a lost pony or whatnot. So non-emergency examples might be someone needs some assistance, some resources. They don't know what to do. Maybe someone has come home from another place and is reporting a crime, but the suspect is not there. That would be a non-emergency. Someone just wants to speak to a police officer. A victim needs help, but they're not in danger. So that would be a non-emergency, example of a non-emergency. So I spoke about this a little bit, but APD MIT, I put their cards up here so that as this is being recorded, people can look these folks up and give them a call. This is in-house at APD, our mobile intervention team. They are not they are not tied to our call stack, which is nice because then they can decide like kind of where to go and what to follow up on. Ruth Adolph and Tanya Vandenbos, Tanya is a social worker and Ruth is a experienced senior patrol officer that actually runs our CIT program and our CIT training. And those are the folks you can call anytime. Their numbers are right on here and they can help you kind of maybe develop plans for people who are coming to the attention of the police. I put on here AMC 880. And what that is it's a municipal code for fees for excessive police response. If someone is calling the police more than 8 times a year, they can start getting fined up to $500 a call after that. And so we have a specialty team, our CAP team, that kind of looks through these excessive police calls and starts fining people for excessive police calls. But what's really nice, since we all do this in-house, is our CAP team will see maybe there's a person with a mental illness or a person who's having people call the police on them a lot, maybe at assisted living home. And they'll work together with Ruth and Tanya and these excessive calls, and they'll come up with a plan. And if they come up with that plan, they can kind of avoid those $500 fees. But it's very sad when we have to start fining people because the law is, we just enforce the law. We don't make the law. And so we want people to come and talk to us and create a plan so that we can avoid 911, we can avoid police officers getting sent out in excess of this municipal code. So MIT is a great in-house program that we have. And like I said, they will oftentimes follow up on a call if a CIT officer has been called out. So I chatted about this a little bit, but the mobile crisis team is fairly new to Anchorage. And these are clinicians. Actually, you can see in these pictures here, this is Jen Pierce. She used to be a police officer, but left the police department. She is a clinician, and she works on the mobile crisis team. And they call themselves a core team. These are non-emergency calls. So our dispatch, if they take a 911 or 311 call and they think that mobile crisis team can be put to use, they will transfer it over to their dispatchers, and then they will dispatch out these 2 clinicians to non-emergency behavioral health crisis or a mental health crisis that's non-violent, no weapons involved, things like that. You can see on the screen here, I put the non-emergency voicemail. And they told me that they will respond to that voicemail within 24 hours. So you can call if you have a question, you need resources, you want someone checked on, something like that. You can leave a message at their non-emergency voicemail, or you can just call 311 and ask for the mobile crisis team. If you call 911 and you're reporting someone is being hurt or there's violence, you will get a police officer. Now, hopefully you'll get a CIT officer, you ask for a CIT officer, but the mobile crisis team is not going to come out in a potentially violent situation. They don't have the means to protect themselves. And so they won't come out in a violent crisis. All right. And so again, I'll sort of circle back to what is an emergency. And I see the chat. Is this PowerPoint available? I'm going to send it to Roberta, and so she can post it wherever necessary. But this, I think, is being recorded and will be posted as well with the PowerPoint included. And so emergencies. So what's an example of an emergency? Like I said, this would be something that someone's being hurt. I think I have one more slide that sort of talks about that. And I'll go back to that last one. So this is where there will be a police response. You're calling 911. There's violence, there's weapons, there's threats to self or others. We need people there right now. There's a missing or abducted, vulnerable child or adult. That's when it's important to call 911. I'm going to just go back a sec. So what to do when you do call 911? It's an emergency line, so your call to 911 will be a priority. Those dispatchers will pick it up just as soon as they can. Sorry, I'm trying to get one of my SROs to log on so that they can talk to us in a minute as well. Give your location if you are on the line. They will ask you first for the location, and stay on the line. Stay on the line until dispatch hangs up with you. And that's important because they will be asking you detailed questions. So give detailed responses. They might be asking you what someone is wearing or what exactly is going on, sort of play by play. So stay on the line with 911. And then that's you at any time too, you want to ask for a CIT officer. This is an appropriate time, even when you are on with 911, you can still ask for a CIT police officer. All right. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Crisis Now. Has anybody heard of Crisis Now? No. Okay. Well, this is a program that has had a lot of success. You can look up Crisis Now in Arizona, and it is in development. In Alaska, where we don't have all the prongs in place, but it is certainly the goal. The city assembly has been working on working with the Mental Health Trust and the state of Alaska to get this whole Crisis Now model put into place. So I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to give you guys a break from my voice, and I'm going to play a video. And so you give about 3 minutes of this video. This is from the Alaska Mental Health Trust as to kind of what is Crisis Now.
Who do you call in a medical health crisis? We all know to call 911 to seek help. But who do you call if you or a loved one finds yourself in a behavioral health crisis? The answer is a bit more complicated. Currently, the only option for Alaskans experiencing a behavioral health crisis is to call 911 and be met by a combination of law enforcement and emergency medical services, and often to be admitted into emergency rooms that are not fully equipped to deal with such crises. For first responders, answering a call for a behavioral health crisis is largely outside of their scope and training. And while well-intentioned, responses by those who are not experienced mental health professionals can prolong or in some cases increase the suffering of a person in crisis. Does this sound like an effective solution to address behavioral health crises? There is a better way. Imagine a system of care for those experiencing a behavioral health crisis that is responsive, is tailored to address the needs of these individuals, and reduces the impact to first responders. With this goal in mind, the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, in partnership with the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services, has been leading efforts to improve outcomes for those in behavioral health crises by enhancing psychiatric crisis response in Alaska's communities. In doing so, the Trust is engaging partners across Alaska, including law enforcement, corrections, local governments, tribal organizations, patient advocates and families, hospitals, and nonprofits. Working to implement the nationally recognized Crisis Now model is a big part of this effort. Simply put, the Crisis Now model means people experiencing a behavioral health crisis get the right care in the right setting when they need it. Just like the response for a person with a medical crisis. How does this model work? First, a behavioral health emergency call is sent by 911 dispatchers to a 24/7 crisis call center, staffed by professionals who are trained to help direct people to the level of care they need. Then, as needed, the crisis call center will deploy a mobile crisis team consisting of a clinician and peer support professional to the location of the individual in crisis. Many behavioral health crises can be resolved safely by the call center and mobile crisis teams, but if necessary, individuals that need additional help stabilizing may receive services at 23-hour crisis stabilization centers and short-term crisis residential centers, which won't turn anyone away. The intentionally designed and coordinated care in the Crisis Now model is focused on providing the best supports for individuals in crisis. These enhancements to our psychiatric system of care can help prevent suicide, reduce the involvement of law enforcement, emergency rooms, and for those in crisis, and lead to better outcomes. Focused on enhancing the capabilities of crisis response in Alaska, the Trust is also working with local and state partners to update crisis-related policies and to provide funding support to assist in offering new crisis services that align with the Crisis Now model in places like Anchorage, Matsu, Fairbanks, and Juneau, and to enhance crisis response in communities, both urban and rural, across the state. To learn more, visit alaskamentalhealthtrust.org/crisisnow.
All right, so Crisis Now is a model that Anchorage is trying to go to. It's in development. Actually, our dispatch has been working almost daily with the crisis line in Fairbanks, so they can work on being able to transfer people to that 24/7 crisis line. And this MCT and MIT programs are part of kind of that foundation. So all the pieces aren't in place, and this is new. So working them together is going to take some time. But by reducing these call loads on our police officers can, I think, really help them do what they signed up to do, which is really law enforcement as opposed to crisis mental health care. So that is in the works. I see I have a special guest for you guys here. I think I saw him. Oh, he popped off, it looks like. I have a school resource officer that is going to try to log in. So when I see him, I will hop to his slide, and it's next. So I don't know what happened to him. He was on there. Uh-oh.
I just saw him in the waiting room.
Yeah, he says he's trying again.
There we go.
Awesome. Matt, can you hear us? Well, I'm going to skip ahead real quick while Matt, if you can talk, just interrupt me, and we'll go back to his slide. So Anchorage APD has specific training, specific policies, and specific procedures regarding CIT. So we will get a CIT officer if you ask for one. Like I said, there's about 150 CIT folks, and even if you're calling from South Anchorage and our Eagle River officer is CIT, they will shift that person over to get you some CIT help. I can't imagine there's a day that goes by or a shift that goes by that there's not a CIT officer on shift. So don't forget to call and ask for a CIT officer. Now, if you're outside of Anchorage, that's where we get into some different policies and procedures. I did talk to Matt Com yesterday, and they told me that they will attempt to get a CIT officer, but remember, it's a little different in trooper land, right? I mean, there might be one officer that's by himself or herself within 3 hours. So what'll typically happen outside of Anchorage is the trooper, if you're calling 911 or the non-emergency line, they don't have 311 outside of Anchorage yet, but they may call you on the way to see kind of what's going on, to see what other kinds of resources that they can get for the call that is specific to your needs. And remember, all over the country, they have CIT. So even if you're on vacation in Arizona and you have to call 911 for your kiddo or for a family member, ask for a CIT officer. There are CIT officers all over this country. So that's kind of cool. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is what we're trying to do as police officers is we're trying to make sure that we're not just seen as a badge and a gun, that we can reduce some of the anxiety that people have when the police come to a call by really just getting out in the community and humanizing our police officers. So around, as many of you probably remember, 2014, 2015, there was departments and communities around our country that didn't trust their police department. There were officer-involved shootings or uses of force, deaths, in custody deaths, and there was not an appropriate response from the police departments to kind of explain what had happened or how to deal with the community hurting in those situations. And so we started Anchorage Cops for Community, which is a nonprofit. And what we do is we are out in the community every single month. We do clothesline projects, shop with a cop and firefighter, Project Angel Tree, coffee with a cop, golf with a cop, sledding with a cop. We just did literally 3 days ago. And we have so many community partners. And so I really encourage you to bring the people you care about that experience disabilities, that experience mental health out to these events so they can talk to police officers and connect with them in a human way, in a positive way, so that maybe some of those more negative experiences go a little easier when there is that trust between the community and our police department. So we do that every single month. We're doing something, so you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, Anchorage Cops for Community. Check out our website. We also use a ton of volunteers. The other ways in which we do outreach in the community, you may have a Girl Scout troop. You may have a kiddo in a 5th grade class. Go onto the Anchorage Police Department website and you can request an officer to come to the class, to the Girl Scout troop, to the Boy Scout troop. And there's an easy request, parents request online. Another fabulous way to connect with us and learn about our police department is by attending the Citizens Academy. There's one going on right now, and you can, when the next one opens, you can go on our website and apply for the Citizens Academy. It's 1 night a week. It's about 3 hours on a Wednesday night, and it lasts, 12 or 14 weeks. And you'll learn about every single part of our police department. What's really cool is when you graduate, you become part of the Citizen Academy alumni. And those people are who we go to for all of our volunteers. So remember when way back at the beginning, when I started talking almost an hour ago now, when I talked about those scenarios we do for our recruits? Well, these are the volunteers that we use for those scenarios. So once you go through the Citizens Academy, you can become a volunteer for us. Come on then you'll come down to the training center and we will put you in scenarios. It's super fun and it's great training for our recruit for in-service officers as well. So those are a couple ways in which to get to know our police department. And I see that Matt's on, so I'm going to pop back to his slide here, because I didn't want to miss out on the great resource that is our school resource officers. Matt's been a police officer for over 20 years, and this was a great story I'll let him tell you guys about. So I will turn it over to Matt, who is also a CIT officer and a school resource officer.
About 2 years ago, I transitioned over to as a school resource officer, and we have a lot of leeway in what we do as SROs. And so I spend a lot of my time with our in our special ed classes here at West High School, over in Romig, and more recently over at East High School. I do some of my time over there now, and a lot of times it's just hanging out. Whether it's, sometimes we go to their PE classes. The West High School special ed, there's a group of about 5 or 6 of them that deliver coffee to me every morning. And so it's like the highlight of their day. They love it. We chat, and there's always, you're kind of breaking down that barrier where there's kids that at the first day, they're kind of hesitant, kind of a little bit worried. They see you kind of interacting with some of the other kids that maybe are a little bit more outgoing, and it's really interesting to see how these kids will, these young adults will kind of start to latch on or open up. And it's, every time I'm walking in the hallways, and especially West High School, but even East now, I can hear these students yell my name, and it's like we've made that connection. I took a selfie with him, and I saw he took the selfie on his Snapchat account. I said, "Oh, hey," I said, "let's send this to my daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, or almost 17-year-old daughter, junior at Chugach High." And so we sent him. He had to send her a friend request. She accepted the friend request, and she made a comment like, "Oh, awesome picture with my dad," and he just like made his day. He was like, "I can't believe your daughter's my friend now." Like, it was, it's just something super small, but you start to connecting with them as a human, right? We're not connecting them as a special ed student or as a police officer. We're just making that human connection, and for me, it makes work not work. It's super enjoyable, and most time when I'm in the schools, I'm not. I don't feel like I'm at work. The other thing is we do obviously have like I had this one student has Down syndrome. He came here last year from American Samoa, knew zero English, and was really kind of closed in, and so I kind of made an effort. We were just playing kickball, and he wouldn't play, so I kind of forced him to play kickball with us, and it got to the point now whenever he sees me at West High, he runs down the hallway, and he's like a wrecking ball. Like, you can't stop him. So I kind of brace myself because he'll take me out, and he gives me big hugs. Well, sometimes he'll have incidents in the classroom where they kind of clear the classroom. He's having a bad day, might be kind of semi-destructive, and they've actually called me in they're like, we don't know what to do with them, and so I'll come in. I've been able to kind of settle him down and hang out with him for 10, 20, 30 minutes, and it's something small, but it's for that student and that time. I mean, this kid that came here from all the way from American Samoa without his parents, living with his sister, and kind of this huge world, a school with 2,000 students, and I feel like I made a difference in his life. The short time I've known him, there's so many kids out there, but trying to find those ones that need that little extra attention, and it's turned something probably very negative for him. He was so kind of lost in this big world, and it's something that brings him joy. It brings me a lot of joy, and so we're as SROs, we're always kind of, everybody in the SRO world, they all have their kind of their niche. There's some of them are into sports. So we have a lot of guys that like at lunchtime, they just go out and they're shooting hoops with kids, or, you know, we have one SRO that plays his guitar at lunchtime, and, you know, all the music kids are into it. And so we're always trying to like connect with the students and let them know and show them the human side of the badge. And in reality, what happens in the schools is we get to know these kids and they get to trust us. And I mean, not to scare people, but we get students coming to us all the time like, hey, we heard there's this kid that has a knife in his backpack, or we hear there's going to be a big fight at lunch, and they trust us. And they're like, hey, don't tell anybody I told you. And so they become, you know, we're able to stop a lot of incidents that never actually occur, because these students are able to trust us, and we gain their trust, and it does really help make the school a safer place.
Someone asked if the Citizen Academy is offered via Zoom or only in person.
It is only in person. We did take a break from the Citizens Academy, but it is in person at our headquarters downtown, 716 West 4th Avenue. And it just started again. This is the first class after COVID.
Someone had one other question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can speak to gender diversity. We covered that in our cultural orientation, is what we call it. I've taught the cultural orientation class here at the Academy for about the last 7 years. We actually have had the last 2 academies have included identity. They've come in and sat on our panel and spoken about gender diversity, because it's always been kind of covered, but we have never, until the last 2 academies, have actually a local person come in. We have a panel of culturally diverse folks. And really what the class is not really teaching our academy recruits, you know, if you see what this person, this is how you treat them, right? Because we treat everyone with respect and dignity and how we would want to be treated. But instead, it's really just inviting them to experience difference, to come out to the Polynesian Flag Day event, to go to the refugee garden in Mountain View, to come out to Pride and interact with folks that are maybe different than them. And that experience can often really help not only in interactions and comfort with our police officers. I'm sure we've heard the catchphrase, implicit bias. You know, we all have implicit bias. It comes from the media, it comes from our culture we've been raised in. And it's really hard to change implicit bias because it is implicit, which means unconscious. And so getting out there and experiencing other people can really challenge those implicit biases, and can really cause our police officers, who often come from outside of Alaska, and Alaska culture is kind of a shock in general. It can really help them experience other ways of life. And that's something we teach from the very beginning of the police academy, is your way to solve a problem might not be the best way. And so to kind of be open-minded about that, and ask and be humble when it comes to your own culture.